Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through some of the noise and look closely at specific ideas from different sources.
That's right. Giving them a proper look, seeing what's really there.
And today, we're diving into some teachings from Sheikh Nurjan Mirhamadi, specifically looking at his guidance on how to navigate, well, the pretty chaotic times we often find ourselves in.
Yeah, it's a very particular perspective, especially relevant now, perhaps.
Exactly. So the core question we're exploring, based on this source, is this viewpoint on getting involved in protests, in angry gatherings. Why does the source see this as a potentially, let's say, dangerous path, spiritually speaking, even if your intentions seem good?
Right. Even if you feel you're fighting for justice, the source puts a different lens on it.
And these teachings, just for context, they come from a spiritual path that really emphasizes, divine love, getting inner guidance, and really working on your character.
Especially important, the source says, in what it calls the last days, a time of intense challenges.
Okay, so let's unpack this perspective from the source. Where does it start?
Well, the source opens right up by emphasizing what it sees as the absolute greatest gift. And that's the divine love and the guidance that comes from Allah Almighty.
The ultimate gift.
The ultimate gift. And says this guidance found its perfect expression through Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him. Connecting to that guidance is presented as the most valuable thing possible.
Okay. And then it draws a contrast, doesn't it?
It does, a sharp one. This talks about dunya people.
Dunya people.
Yeah, it's the term the source uses for people mainly focused on the material world, the physical stuff we see around us. The dunya.
So people caught up in the day-to-day, the headlines.
Exactly. And the source says when these people see events unfolding, conflicts, crises, whatever their main reaction is often, panic, fear. Oh my God, look what's happening.
Just reacting to the surface chaos.
Right. Like looking at the waves but not understanding the ocean currents underneath. The source kind of describes him like the fool on the hill, just observing the madness without that deeper inner understanding of why or, crucially, what time it is spiritually.
What time it is.
Yeah, that's key. Contrast that with what the source calls the aliyah, the saints, the guided souls, also referred to as the ulul amir, those with spiritual guidance.
And they see things differently.
Completely differently, according to the source. They don't just see the events. They have foresight. An inner understanding. They grasp the spiritual timing. They know what time it is.
So it's not just fortune telling, it's about understanding the spiritual phase we're in.
Precisely. The source uses an Arabic phrase, iqarabat as-sa'at. It means the hour has drawn near. These guided souls, it says, recognize that the events aren't just random. They're signs, part of a bigger spiritual picture, indicating this specific phase.
Which informs how they react, presumably not with panic.
Right. Their understanding goes deeper. And this leads to a really critical point the source makes about where you invest your energy, your love.
Okay.
It says connecting your heart, your spiritual focus, to this material world, the dunya, especially when it's described as collapsing or turbulent. Well, that's a wasted attraction.
A wasted attraction. What does that mean exactly?
Think of it like hooking your deepest energy, your love, onto something temporary, unstable. Something that's, in the source's view, heading downwards.
Like attaching yourself to a sinking ship.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Or like connecting to a magnet that pulls you. But it isn't anchored to anything solid or eternal. Your energy gets drained, but it doesn't elevate you.
So where should that connection go, according to the source?
Towards the heavens. Towards eternity. Towards the divine. That's where the real lasting connection is. And the source says you nurture this by loving those already connected to the heavens, the aliyah, the guides, and fundamentally through love for Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, the prime example of that connection.
So redirecting that core human need for connection upwards, spiritually speaking, not outwards into the chaos.
Exactly. That's presented as the foundational step for navigating these times, shifting your focus inward and upward.
Okay, that sets the stage. Now, how does this guidance actually work inside a person? What's the inner state the source describes?
Right, this is fascinating. The source gives a layered picture. It starts with Islam's submission to Allah Almighty's will as the foundation, located symbolically in the right chest.
Submission as the base.
Then, inside the heart itself, there's Iman. And the source equates Iman directly with faith and divine love. It's not just belief, it's love.
Faith equals love in the heart.
Yes. And then higher up, maybe symbolized by the forehead, is Maqamul Izan. This is the station of moral excellence, constantly refining your character, making it beautiful.
So it's a progression. Submit, cultivate love and faith, then perfect your character.
Exactly. And achieving these states leads to becoming what the source calls alu basira.
People of spiritual vision?
Precisely. People who can see beyond the surface, into the unseen realities, the spiritual forces at play. They have inner sight.
And the source is clear about what kind of Islam it's talking about here, right?
Very clear. It emphasizes that real Islam isn't just rules and rituals. It's rooted in ishq and muhabbat, intense divine love and deep affection, and manifesting the best character, khuluqin azim. It's a light, a guidance.
Contrasting it with maybe more political or superficial versions.
Yes, the source distinguishes it from what it sees as corrupted forms that lose that core of love and character.
Okay, now this next part about the inner mechanics is really interesting. The light?
Yeah, this is unique. The source says when someone sincerely submits, grows that love in the heart, and works on their character, Allah Almighty places a light within their heart. The light of faith, of divine love.
And that light influences the mind.
It does. It radiates upward, influencing the head, the thinking faculty. And here's the crucial bit, according to the source. This light shuts off access from shaitan, from satanic influence.
Shuts it off.
The source explains that shaitan is constantly trying to whisper negative thoughts, fear, anger, doubt into your mind, trying to hijack your thinking. But when that divine light from the heart is strong and illuminates the head,
it blocks those whispers.
It effectively jams the signal. It shuts off shaitan's broadcast. So the mind isn't primarily getting input from those lower influences anymore. Instead, it becomes receptive to the guidance coming from the light-filled heart.
Wow. So the heart, guided by divine light, is meant to lead the mind and protect it.
That's the core idea. It's described as bringing the heavenly kingdom back within the individual, restoring the proper order where the divine connection governs the whole person.
And there's a sacred saying connected to this state.
Yes. The source links this to a well-known hadith al-Qudsi, a divine saying related through the prophet, peace and blessing be upon him.
And how is it interpreted here?
In this interpretation, when a person reaches that deep level of submission, love, and purity, Allah Almighty says, essentially, I become their hearing, their sight, their hand, their foot. The source adds, their speaking, their breath, my hands upon their hands.
Meaning their actions and senses become aligned with or facilitated by the divine.
Exactly. They become, you might say, a walking embodiment of divine will guided from within. Their actions flow from that divine connection, not from ego or external negativity. That's the state of being truly guided, according to this source.
Okay, so we have this foundation, guidance over reaction, and this inner state where divine light guides the heart and mind. Now, how does this apply to protesting? To those angry gatherings?
Right, this is where the teaching gets very direct, potentially very challenging for some. The source states clearly, in these last days, characterized by turmoil, the guided ones, those following the Aliyah, are taught not to get angry externally, and specifically not to protest in the streets.
Not to protest, and the source questions why someone would.
It asks pointedly, why get angry? Why protest? Is it, the source implies, like protesting against God's will itself? It sees this reaction as fundamentally misunderstanding what time it is, spiritually.
A sign of a lack of that inner guidance we just discussed.
Exactly. Stemming from a state where the heart's light isn't fully in charge, allowing external events and maybe lower influences to provoke that anger. And the source warns this can lead to consequences.
Like what?
Finding yourself in the wrong place, wrong time, potentially facing harm, described starkly as punishment by the hands of men whom have no mercy.
Wow. And it uses strong language about the streets themselves.
Very strong. It says the streets, in these times, especially during such events, are effectively owned by shaitan, the devil and demons.
Owned by shaitan, meaning spiritually dominated by negative energy.
That's the idea. It's a spiritual assessment. The source sees these spaces when filled with anger and chaos as saturated with negative spiritual energy, rage, fear, manipulation. And entering that space means stepping outside the realm of divine guidance and protection.
Because truth and falsehood don't mix.
Truth and falsehood never enter into the same arena, that's the quote. So divine guidance can't operate in a space spiritually controlled by its opposite, according to this view. Joining an angry protest isn't just political, it's seen as a spiritual alignment with that negative field.
And the description of the behavior itself is quite negative, too.
Yes, the source describes it as foolish people gathering, screaming, yelling, covering their face, chanting. It states very clearly, none of which are the characteristics of the heavens.
So these actions aren't seen as divinely inspired or aligned.
No, quite the opposite. The source views them as reflecting satanic influence, actions that actually provoke divine anger rather than resolving injustice. The anger fueling it isn't righteous indignation.
It's seen as ignorance.
Companions to ignorance, yes. The opposite of having that guiding light of faith in the heart. And when all these fiery, angry individuals gather,
it creates a bigger fire.
A raging fire, the source says. A collective inferno of negative energy. And that chaotic, uncontrolled rage is exactly what Shaitan wants, because it's an environment completely lacking true guidance or divine presence. It's a purely spiritual interpretation of the act and its consequences.
Okay, so if that path, protesting, mass anger, is seen as misguided and dangerous, what is the recommended path according to the source? What's the alternative?
The alternative is intensely focused inward. The core instruction from the guiding sheikhs, as presented, is essentially to hide yourself.
Literally hide, or spiritually.
More spiritually, it seems. A withdrawal from the external fray, an inward turn. Protect yourself, protect your family, keep them safe from these widespread negative energies.
And the focus becomes
keeping yourself good, working constantly on your own character, doing good deeds, training your family in goodness and good character. It's all about internal refinement in action.
And there's that powerful reframing when you see injustice.
Yes, instead of immediate outward anger, the teaching is, look inward first. Am I oppressing myself? Are you so worried about the external problems, but ignoring your own potential spiritual failings, your own bad character, your own negative desires that are not pleasing to the divine? Are you potentially facing a worse situation internally or in the hereafter because of your own state?
That's a radical shift, turning the focus from blaming others to examining yourself.
Absolutely. It's a call for deep personal accountability. The source frames the Sufi path it represents as this constant process. Find your own faults. Work tirelessly to perfect yourself. And that's how you make the world better, not through mass anger, but by radiating love, hope, kindness through your own refined character and personal actions.
And the source says the way to correct wrongs has changed.
It does. It argues the time for correcting with the hand with physical force is gone.
And correcting with writing with public campaigns.
That time has also passed, according to this viewpoint. In these end times, the source argues, the spiritual climate is such that those external methods are no longer effective or spiritually sound.
So what's left?
All you can do is pray and get resolution within your heart. That's the direct teaching presented.
Prayer and interchange.
Yes. The source argues that external gatherings fueled by anger are just ignorant people gathering in ignorant and fiery places. Spiritually ineffective and harmful. Real change starts inside.
And it connects back to that saying about Allah Almighty changing a people's condition.
Until these change what's within their hearts.
Yeah, exactly. The source uses this to underscore that external conditions won't truly improve if people's inner states remain unchanged, full of anger and lacking guidance. Self-purification is the key.
So the practical path recommended is internal work.
Yes. To stay protected, to stay aligned, to remain under the nazar, the protective spiritual gaze of Allah Almighty and Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, the source emphasizes specific practices.
Doing good deeds consistently. Constantly making istighfar, seeking forgiveness for your faults, and making salawat, sending praises upon Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him. These actions cultivate the inner light, keep the heart connected, and provide spiritual strength and protection against the external negativity.
So recapping this deep dive into Sheikh Nurjan Miramati's teachings, the core message seems to be that in chaotic times, true guidance means focusing inward, cultivating character, purifying the heart with love and faith, connecting through prayer and good deeds.
Right. And seeing those external angry mass actions like protesting as spiritually detrimental, influenced by lower energies, and ultimately not the path to real change in this specific era, according to this source.
What's fascinating here is how this source completely flips the script on where we should place our energy when faced with injustice or difficult world events. It shifts the focus entirely from external action and confrontation to internal transformation and spiritual refinement as the truly effective and spiritually sound path for these times.
It's a radical reorientation, moving the locus of action from the street to the heart, essentially.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener, navigating today's world? If this source's perspective holds weight and maybe changing the outside world directly is less feasible now than intense inner change and prayer, what might be the most powerful yet perhaps overlooked form of action available to you right now? Where could that energy be most effectively directed within your own life, your own inner landscape?
A powerful question to sit with.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.